One of the pedophiles who I was introduced to at about 13 years old around Buckhannon is Kevin Casto. And Kevin Casto actually practically forced himself on me in, I think, Little John's bedroom up at Susan Holderman's house. It was actually Steve Holderman who took me from, I think, Terry Mackey's old house or something like that. And it took me over to Susan's house. Well, the only person who was there at the time was Kevin. And Kevin basically like hung out with me for a second, and they took me up to Little John's room, and he laid me down on the bed and commenced doing everything, basically. And one really weird part about that story is that I actually looked out the window in the back there, like from Little John's room. And I've only met him like once or twice or whatever. He was like older than me, of course. I looked out the back window and I saw the end of the rainbow in Susan's backyard, which was really bizarre because I'd never actually seen the end of the rainbow before, and there was no fucking pot of gold at the end. And I can't remember actually how I left from there, but it was a really fucking uncomfortable situation. It was really yucky, icky. Like I didn't know how to tell anybody no at the time. And even if I wanted to, I was like afraid to, because I was afraid, you know, people just do it anyways and it'd be even more uncomfortable to put up some kind of fight or whatever. Anyways, that is how it was for me whenever I was a kid. And like, I don't know if that was recorded or not, but somehow or another, Susan found out about it, and she made a voodoo doll of me in retaliation and began to try to hurt me through a voodoo doll and through witchcraft. Yeah. And I only met the bitch like one time or whatever. And then like somehow or another they had Kevin come on to me and like push himself on me basically when I was only 13. And then the bitch made a fucking voodoo doll of me. Like a fucked up bitch. And then at one point later on, whenever I was like 18 or whatever, I started to date one of Kevin's brothers. And Kevin would basically like come pick me up and like force me to go with him. He would like make me leave my whole family, my kids, everything, and literally like fucking kidnap me. I would be like, dude, I need to go home now. Like, I left laundry in the fucking washing machine or the dryer. You know what I mean? Like back in Valley Green, my kids are at my mom's house. I can't just leave like this, dude. And he would hold me hostage for like fucking 3 or 4 days and shit before he would drop me back off. I would be like, no, dude, I don't want to do anything with you. Like I think at the time I was dating his brother. At one point I was dating his brother, and then later on down the road I wasn't, you know what I mean? But it was still really fucking shitty of him to do, and he probably did that to me about 3 or 4 times. And he would basically come get me. He'd lay out these big giant lines of meth and shit, and their meth that they made fucking tasted terrible. It smelled terrible. It was like this. I know that everybody likes that anhydrous shit, but it's just, especially whenever it's still a little bit damp and stuff like that, like to just fucking do it like that. It's like, especially when you're a fucking teenager, you know what I mean? A kid and a teenager and shit like that. Like it's just so, it was just so acidic to me, and it was just so disgusting. It was black, you know? And I would be like, dude, I really don't want to do this. I was like, I can't, you know what I mean? He'd be like, yes, you can. And he would literally like, I mean, I guess he didn't force me to do it, but he kind of forced me to fucking do it. I realized that in order to force someone to do something, you're supposed, I guess, you have to take and put a gun to their head before you're technically forcing them. I think that that's a really shitty rule, that you're not forcing someone unless you have a gun to their head, or you're not really robbing them unless you have a gun to their head. It's fucking stupid rules that they came up with. But definitely as an impressionable kid who did not have my own no one ever taught me to defend myself because no one wanted me to defend myself. They wanted me to continually fall prey to these predators. That's how it has been my whole life. That's how it's all been set up. So like over and over again, Kevin would come kidnap me, basically, take me out to some fucking shithole fucking trailers or wherever the fuck, have me do meth with him and fucking stay up for days until I finally broke down and fucking, basically he would force himself on me then too. It was like, he wasn't going to let me leave and go back to my family and my kids unless I did whatever he wanted. And I'd be like, you know what I mean? And so he would try to do something with me and it would last like 1 minute and then he would be done. And then he would like take me back to Valley Green, you know what I mean? Which was really weird. And he had something tattooed on his junk and I'm not sure if it says Thunder. I'm not sure. I can't remember what it was, but he's a dumbass. And then whenever I worked over here for the bicentennial and everybody was set up to be douchebags to me while I was working, trying to get my kids back who they had taken away the first time, he would come into the gambling room and act like he was so fucking cool, smoking in there and putting his fucking cigarettes out on the fucking machine, which it was literally just to be fucking disrespectful to me because now I'm going to have to go in and I clean that, gambling room at the end of the night, take all the money, write a check for the fucking, lottery commission, all those things that really untrustworthy people would be fucking expected to do. But then when I was in Texas with Tim Strother, I heard for the first time I was given, like a statement basically by Tim. Like he told me that Kevin killed Brad Casto. And apparently like everybody knew it or something like that. Everybody knew how it happened because as soon as I opened my mouth back here to say how it happened, everybody was like, shh, no, that's not what happened and stuff like that. I know I look all crazy. But he basically said that, hang on a second, I got to put a pancake in here. Tim told me that Kevin, in retaliation against Brad or to prevent Brad from finding out what Kevin did something to Brad or that he didn't want him to find out about, and they're trying to say that Brad owed a lot of money that he wasn't going to pay or some fucking trash like that. Said that Kevin and Brad were side by side, sitting with each other. Brad was in. I'm assuming Brad was in the driver's seat, and that Kevin was in the passenger seat. I can't remember. Like I don't know if they had an article about it or if I may have read something on it or some shit like I don't know. But apparently Kevin had some anhydrous ammonia in a container, which is always what they were making meth with and shit. And I heard that like Kevin actually made so much motherfucking anhydrous around here. And I'm not a drug rat. I'm not a rat in general. But this whole little connection of pedophiles needs to be fucking conquered. They're fucking trash. They're all in a little fucking nasty trafficking child pedophile ring thing together. They can all fucking go to the same motherfucking prison. I don't give a single fuck. Anyways, that Kevin had whatever container or whatever that was full of anhydrous ammonia, and that he just reached over to Brad and was like, hey, take a whiff of this, smell this stuff. It smells really good or whatever. He was like, hey, take a whiff of this. And it said that Brad took one really good whiff of it and fucking died. And that was how that was how Kevin Casto killed Brad Casto, with fucking anhydrous ammonia. And there's people who know that shit and of course keep it to themselves, like everybody keeps everything to themselves. And, that would all be fine and dandy and shit if you guys weren't letting all the fucking kids get molested. Still to this day. You know what I mean? Still making voodoo dolls of me, these fucking whores. Yeah, these fucking satanic ass whores were literally working against me. I'm just gonna put a hat on because I want to fucking fix my hair yet. I started the video without even fucking thinking about it or giving a fuck about any of that shit. I felt inspired to fucking speak, and now I'm doing just that. But yeah, all these fucking whores who used to practice magic and witchcraft on me and shit whenever I was only like 11, 13, they're still fucking with me to this day, them and their nasty little fucking pedophile circle. So to extend this particular video just a little bit, I am going to mention some other pedophiles aside from Kevin Casto. I'm not sure if you guys remember Chris Gould, but Chris Gould was one of the people who my mom introduced to me in Valley Green when I was about 13 years old. He smoked a bunch of pot with me, and then he was like trying to get me to make out with him and stuff. That's all I'm going to say about him. That's one of the lighter things. Then there was a guy named Mark who was married to or dated a gal named Bambi. They had a baby together. That Mark dude was also hitting on me when I was 13 years old. There was a gal named Jamie Simons who was killed. She was killed in a car accident while she was pregnant. She was supposed to be going into the military. I was only like 13 or 14 when this happened. And she was hooked up with a guy named Greg, I think his name was, or Gary. I think it might have been Gary. And that Gary dude would end up hitting on me and making out with me in an apartment in Valley Green, actually, and just begged me to sleep with him. Begged me to sleep with him, and I couldn't do it. Started to force himself on me, but stopped. Michael Waggy. I was 11 years old when I was introduced to Michael Waggy, and also I was introduced to Purple Jesus at the time, which is Everclear and grape juice or something like that, which was my mom's doing. And I was introduced to Michael at a Waking Underwater party in out in the country somewhere, when my mom and aunt and all them worked for Sam's Pizza, and Waking Underwater was like a band that was associated with the people who worked at Sam's back then. And Mike Waggy made out with me like a motherfucker beside this pool, and made out, and then like gave me his phone number, and we did not end up meeting up or hooking up until I was in my early 20s or something like that. They set all this shit up to where me and he and I would hook up or something like that, and that was really bad. A dude named Ray Perrine, he and his parents lived out towards Adrian in a like 2-story house or whatever up on the hill. Ray worked at the dollar store for a little while. Ray was another person who was introduced to me by Brett. Whenever I was just a teenager, living in my mom's apartment in Valley Green, he would invite Ray over, and then Ray would be this 24-year-old dude who was alone in my mom's apartment with me whenever I was only, 13 or whatever, and he would like literally make out with me and be like really forceful and like putting his hands around my throat and like weird, like really fucking aggressive, like weird shit that I really didn't need to be exposed to at 13 years old. Like when you're a kid, everything is new to you. You're really sensitive. You definitely don't need for people to be like doing all the extra weird shit that the adults do to each other because they're fucking desensitized. And I mean, this motherfucker would like have me go into the kitchen and like get up on the countertop and be like going at it. Like Ray really did go at it. Like one time he took me to, my family, everybody, we all went to the Strawberry Festival. And like, it was my mom's birthday actually. And I think that they all set it up to where Ray would take me to this abandoned house out beside where it was the Bicentennial. There's a house back there that is now occupied, I think. But back then it was abandoned. Unless there's a house behind it. I don't know. I'd have to walk back there and look. But, like, I told him that I didn't want to leave the Strawberry Festival. I told him I didn't want to do anything like that. Even when we got to the house, I was like, no, I really don't want to. And he turned me around and, like, bent me over and started going at it and stuff like that. Well, that one I actually did end up telling my mom about, because that dude, I could not tell him no. I couldn't tell him no in my mom's house. I couldn't tell him no out in the fucking abandoned house. The dude would not fucking listen. He was deliberately being like really aggro and insensitive and shit like that. Like, so because my parents were actually the ones who set that up, they told the cop to say something like, or somehow the cop knew to say something like, well, can you describe Ray's boxers to me? And I was like, I wouldn't have seen it. I don't know if I would have seen his boxers. Like, maybe I saw them, maybe I didn't. It was kind of like a traumatic thing. Like, I'm just bent over this rail, and it's like I'm just waiting for this shit to be over with. Like, if I looked down and saw his boxers, I can't remember if I noticed a pattern on them or what they looked like or anything. Like, I just, like, maybe I knew right there in that moment, but I just couldn't fucking see it, and I couldn't answer their silly ass question. And so they were like, well, I mean, if you can't even describe to me what the man's boxers looked like, then how am I going to be able to do anything about this? So, like, maybe they set it up to where, like, I wouldn't be able to see his boxers, but that if I tried to, like, admit what was going on, the cops just knew to say, well, if you can't describe to me what the man's boxers look like, then you're lying. And so this would be some of the beginning of people denying sexual abuse allegations whenever I was a teenager. And this would be the beginning of me figuring out that, like, the cops and my parents and everybody was in on this whole, like, child skex thing. I understand that there are especially a lot of people, especially around here, who are like, well, when it bleeds, it breeds. And back in the day, my grandma and my great-grandparents, they were pushing out kids as soon as they started their periods and all that shit. That's fucking great. Okay, whatever. I don't give a single fuck. My fucking great-grandma went through the same fucking trash. That shit is fucking illegal today, and for good fucking reason. I don't give a fuck. All right. And then another person who kept reaching into my crotch all the time was fucking Joe Humphrey. And he was with Terry Mackey at the time. And, like, they would, like, set things up to where, like, I was running to the store with him alone. So it would be like me riding beside him in his truck while he's, like, reaching over, grabbing my leg and stuff, which is the same thing that the pedophile from my youth pastor pedophile used to do whenever I was in Amarillo, and my Amarillo parents would set me up to get molested by the youth pastor, whose name was Brian Almerode. So sorry, I didn't mean to. So back to the Joe Humphrey story. Yeah, dude, he was, like, begging me to get it on with him, begging me to at least let him reach into my pants and things like that. And honestly, I really liked Terry. I really liked Terry Mackey whenever I was a teenager. I even had a crush on Terry Mackey. And between the two of them, at 13 or 14 years old, if Terry Mackey would have come on to me, I probably would have dove right into it. Like, just being real with you. But her boyfriend, I had no fucking interest in whatsoever. And I don't appreciate, I guess, the both of them fucking setting that shit up. And who knows who else is behind setting all of that up. Brian Almerode of Amarillo, Texas, that's another pedophile who, he took me to his house. But on the way to his house, he had to reach over and hold my leg, just like Joe. Only I was younger when he was doing this. I was like 9 years old. And he would just, like, have his hand on my leg all the time, which is what my dad did to my stepmom all the time. So I think that they set it up like that to just be really, really awkward, told him to do that. They thought that would be real funny. And then I went into his house, which I begged my parents to please not let me go to, like, please don't make me go to this dude's house. You know what I mean? And they fucking had me go with him anyways. They set it up a couple times to where I would be trapped going to this dude's fucking house with him. Like, even told the dude, like, no, I don't want to go to your fucking house with you right in front of him. They still fucking made me go. So it was way obvious what they were fucking doing. And he took me into his bedroom. Well, he wasn't interested in my little brother. He had my brother sit out in the living room. Just fucking sit there. Like, hey, I didn't really want you to come. I just brought your sister here to fucking molest her. You're kind of a fucking pain in the ass. Why don't you sit in the fucking living room? And that was kind of the treatment that my little brother would get a lot of the time. And that Brian Almaroad dude was, like I said, one of the youth pastors in my church, Mescalero Baptist Church back in Amarillo. And he took me in his bedroom. He bent me over the bed. He was pressing himself against me and feeling me up all over and stuff. And he did this shit when I was 9. And I think he had access to me when I was 11 as well for a second, and was doing weird stuff. But I felt him doing something weird behind me instinctively or whatever. And I looked behind me and he was holding a fucking camera. And I realized that he was taking pictures of me and he was really, really enjoying these pictures. Well, I knew that my parents had been taking pictures and videos of me too, because I would wake up, like they would take me out to like Lake Meredith or wherever. They would take me out to like play really hard, basically places. And I remember as early as 7 waking up in a bedroom with the lights on, a camera pointed at me. Here I am. I still have a sweater on, but I have no pants, no underwear. I'm all wet and stuff like that. And I know that my parents have done something to me and yucky. It's really bizarre. And I have to get up and, you know what I mean, get myself dressed and stuff like that. And I lay down and, you know what I mean? It's not like for another day or two that I go in and tell my parents that they left the camera in my room, which I'm assuming that they meant for the camera to just be there. And maybe they just expected to just be able to put the camera in there. Big ass camcorder, dude. Like this was in the 90s. Okay. And they just had it up in my closet pointed at me. Maybe they just thought that they were just going to be able to do that forever or something like that. Or maybe they covered up the red part of it that showed it was recording. Maybe they were just recording me constantly. But that was after I caught the neighbor watching me in through the window. And so I guess they had to come up with some other way to allow me to be watched. But back then it was just that camcorder that they had. And rather than letting someone watch me while I'm, awake and playing, it turns into like, oh, well, maybe we'll only be able to violate her if she's unconscious or asleep or whatever. And that was, I believe, when my parents began to drug me and molest me in my sleep. I'm trying to think of who else. And then right next door to my grandparents' house in Texas was a guy named Erasmo Dominguez and his wife Dottie, or girlfriend Dottie. I think that all of that may have been actually set up by my uncle, Danny, because he seemed to extra know what was going on and acted like it was a problem to him and that he was throwing a fit, but I'm pretty sure that he was the one setting it up. I've seen a couple different of my family members put on that same act and act like they were just shocked and that they were disapproving of, that they were shocked and disapproving of what they knew was going on, but they were the ones who fucking set the shit up. Also, right, like 2 doors down from my parents, there were a couple named Amy and Eric Allison. That was a married couple that lived a couple doors down from me. They had a couple kids. Amy was kind of being like abused and neglected a little bit as a wife, and cheated on real bad and stuff. But her husband, Eric, actually, like, as I was just walking by out front, and this is the guy who lives on the other side of the guy, like, from where our house was at 5106 Goodnight Trail in Amarillo, Texas. Like, there was the creepy dude that lived right beside us who was watching me through the window, right? And then right in the house next to his was Eric and Amy's house. And as I walked by out front there, like, didn't even know he had a wife and kids, nothing like that. He pulled me aside, hung out with me for a little bit, and then took me in the backyard and got it on with me, the backyard or whatever. And that was really weird. Like, he just took me in the backyard, turned me like up against his fence and stuff like that, and like, just kind of a weird dude. Just kind of a weird way to go about doing it. And I don't know whether or not that was recorded either. But, you know, everybody in the hood was doing the same shit. And it didn't matter what hood I went to. And it was because my parents were part of this fucking child trafficking ring. I would go over to my little friend's house in Lambie Lane Apartments. And that was a little girl who basically was getting molested. She and her sisters were all getting molested by their dad. And like, they were actually a little bit on the twisted side to where, like, I'm not sure, but it was almost like they liked it, or they had been like conditioned to really like it. And they like were like offering me up and stuff like that, and like asking me if I if I would sit with their dad and let their dad touch me and stuff like that. So, like, this was a girl that I went to school with, but, you know, it's the Amarillo child trafficking ring. They're all fucking connected and shit. And the dude would like have me sit on his lap, and here I am at like 10. I think I'm about 10 years old. I might have been 11. But the dude is just like reaching in under my clothes and feeling me up and rubbing me and just rubbing me all over my whole body. And you know what I mean? Just everywhere, just rubbing at me. And everybody would just sit there and watch TV, and that dude would just rub me up and feel me up and stuff. And I think his daughters were at some point, like, I think that they were like relieved that it wasn't them that he was feeling up for a second. And then that Eric dude, it was actually like, I ended up strolling by later on and saw his wife, and she was trying to talk to me. And then she would invite me into bed with both of them. And she just had babies and stuff. And I remember her lactating at the time. That was the first time that I'd ever been with a woman who was lactating. And I was like 13 or 14. And of course, my parents would pretend that they didn't have any idea what was going on or whatever. And my dad would be like, "Oh, you've got a really beautiful friend," because she was kind of like a model. Some weird dude named John Grabber, who was also in the Park Lane or Lambie Lane Apartments when I was a kid, also just randomly got it on with me. My uncle had a friend named Dustin Black, I think, and Dustin, we all went out on the Canadian River, riding around on rafts one time, and Dustin started like trying to kind of get his mac on with me, and I was flirting back with him and stuff like that. And I was like 13 or 14 then. And my uncle acted like he was really, really mad and stuff like that. And there's that dude, Jim Bob, was with us. And Jim Bob ended up like being like a molester of the other girls in my family. And I rode alone with Jim Bob, and Jim Bob never did anything to me. He never reached over on me or anything like that. But apparently he was showing the other little girls in my family pornography and all kinds of stuff, which sounds absolutely fucking horrible. So, you know, and then he wanted to throw a fit about that. Basically, anytime that anybody would speak up, or anytime a situation would be obvious, then my uncle or whoever would throw these fits and act like they were, or my stepmom or whatever, they'd throw these fits and act like they were so shocked about what was happening when they were the ones fucking setting the shit up. And it looks like I'm going to have to make a part 2 of this because I know that there's more, but I just wanted to, and I have to check some messages and stuff. But, that's just a tiny little dose of like some of the people who were involved in this whole trafficking ring type thing, and the kind of people who were called upon to do different fucked up shit, or just people who were pedophiles in general who I really don't feel like I randomly ran into or was just randomly meeting these people. I feel like every single one of these situations was a setup, set up. Probably people really took the time to think about how they were going to fucking set it all up so that it would look like that I was just stumbling into these situations by my own accord. Oh, there was a guy who was from Brazil. I don't know who the guy was at all, but my stepmom took me to a Chevrolet car convention. That was the Chevy convention, and they were doing like a car show and stuff. And they took us to, I'm pretty sure they took us to what, I don't know if it was the Harvey Hotel, but it was a hotel out in like Dallas or whatever, where they were having the convention. So we drove from Amarillo to Dallas and it was supposed to be to stay the night in this hotel. And basically all that happened was my stepmom had me sit out beside the swimming pool with her. And she just kept me there and kept me there and kept me there. And then she was like, wait a second, and then I'll let you go and stuff like that. And then when she finally let me go, she sat there texting somebody for the longest time. And then like when she finally let me go, I began to walk into the hotel, and there was only one entrance for me to take, or one, you know what I mean? One place for me to go from the pool into the building and stuff. And this guy from Brazil from fucking South America would immediately like intercept my walking and be like, hey girl, you like weed? You know what I mean? And my parents had all gotten me to smoke weed, and I really actually loved weed. I like started to really love weed. And I didn't have anything down there or whatever, riding around with my parents, going with them to Dallas, which was kind of an odd thing because my parents didn't take me with them places. My parents would leave me alone in the house for weeks at a time. They didn't take me with them places. They didn't do things with me. So this guy, he's like, hey, you want to get high? You want to come to my hotel room and get high? And I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I am jonesing pretty bad having to fucking hang out with my family here at this shitty ass hotel, which actually was a really kind of nice hotel. So he takes me into the bedroom. I can't remember if he has pot or not. If he does smoke it with me, it's only a little bit. And then he basically commences to fucking get it on with me. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's obvious that, I know that I'm on my period at the time, which he's kind of like, and like, he finds out that I'm not a virgin because I'm like, sure, ripping it all off. I'm like, sure, fuck it, let's go. You know what I mean? And he's obviously like really disappointed. It's bad timing as far as me being on my moon time goes. And he's like, you mean you're not a virgin? And he's so upset that I'm not a virgin, right? And that's whenever I realized that my parents have set it up and they told him that I was a virgin. So like now he's not going to be able to do what he planned on doing. He's not really like, he does do it. Like he does get it on with me for a second, but you can tell that he's totally not satisfied. It's not what he paid for. It's not what he signed up for. And whenever I leave from there, he gives me like some fake Ford address, some like Ford something email address. And it might be the only address that he can think of, and that it has to do with the Ford dealership or something like that. You could tell that he spoke English, but just barely. And then whenever I made it back to my parents' hotel room, I was all stoned and shit, and they were fucking pissed, dude. They were pissed in there, and my stepmom was trying to hide. how fucking mad she was and shit like that. But she had to cancel the fucking hotel, get her money back, and drive us all back to fucking Amarillo. Because apparently the dude did, she tried to say that, that the Chevy convention, whatever, was paying for these free hotels and shit for us to go stay the night so that we could be a part of this car show convention trash or whatever. She had there was supposed to be some seminar or some trash. I don't know. It was all a lie. And she apparently thought she was going to get paid enough money to be able to cover that room, but she wasn't going to be able to. So she canceled the fucking reservation. She got her money back, and we all drove back to Amarillo. My parents were pissed in the front seat. There was complete fucking silence. They were really angry, and I was somewhat satisfied with the buzz that I had, but I felt icky all over, and you know what I mean? I was listening to Eminem on my headphones and shit like that, and I could feel my parents just hated me. Basically, my parents would just like pass me back and forth for a few years or whatever between Texas and West Virginia, where they just let me get molested and fucking raped and abused by all these different fucking people. No one gave a shit about like what I wanted for my life or anything. You know what I mean? Of course, when you're being trafficked as a kid, nobody gives a fuck about you. And then I remember whenever I was locked up in the juvenile detention center in Amarillo, Texas, I still was not spared from the molestation tactics, as I had a therapist in there whose name was Ricky Smithson. And at one point he was like, why don't we just get on the floor right now and start making out? And I was like, huh? He was like, let's just get on the floor right now. Why don't we just get on the floor right now and just start getting it on? I mean, what's stopping us? And stuff like that. And like, then I would just be like really uncomfortable and not like jumping on it, and not getting on the floor, not trying to get it on with him and stuff like that. And then he would joke around and be like, oh, the reason why we can't do anything together is because we can't commit to each other and all this shit. But later on as an adult, like, he definitely reinforced what he was doing by admitting to me that he was trying to take advantage of me whenever I was a kid, which I was pretty sure that was what was going on. But then later on, he would give me these books on the female anatomy, and he would tell me that I needed to learn how to masturbate. Yeah, while I'm living in a fucking cell, while adult staff walk around and check the fucking window every 10 to 15 minutes, the dude's asking me to learn my anatomy and to practice masturbating. He begins to tell me that masturbation will change my chemistry, and it'll relieve a lot of stress for me, and it'll really improve my life. My mother's mom, her name was Beverly. I'm pretty sure she had 10 different last names in her lifetime, but the very last name that she had before she died was Fuentes. So she like somehow changed her name from a white woman to a Mexican woman's name right at the end there. She used to do molesty things with my little brother and I. And she would like sit me in her lap and be like messing with my underwear and telling me about, she would be like sexually shaming me, and she would be telling me about how nasty my underwear were, and then I needed to take them off and all this shit. And then I would like take the underwear off, and she would do all this nasty stuff with my underwear and tell me how nasty my underwear was. She would do this to me. Every fucking morning in Sunday school, I would get molested like this by my grandma. And she would molest the other little kids too, even little babies and stuff. It was absolutely horrible. And she would always tell me that my panties were dirty. I swear, dude, like so like every time that it was time for me to go to church, I would be like, oh my God, I have to make sure my panties are clean and shit. And I would be like 2 and 3 years old, running through, looking through for the cleanest pair of underwear that I had, because my great granny was going to be shaming me and abusing me because of my underwear. And like, I would tell my mom, I'd be like, my underwear are dirty. And my mom would be like, your underwear they're not dirty. Like, well, what the fuck are you talking about? And she did say that whenever, she did mention one time that she realized whenever I was every time she said that we would go to church, that I would start being frantic and panicking about my underwear, that she realized that something was going on. My mom also told me that right after I was first born, that she lived in a trailer with my dad. And she says that my dad, as she was carrying groceries in from going shopping one day, she says that my dad ran out to the car as she was carrying groceries in, and that he told her that he had committed some oral act against me while I was a fucking newborn. She describes that she dropped all the groceries and that she couldn't believe what she was hearing, and she was just so shocked. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm not sure that my mother wasn't actively doing stuff to me with my dad and allowing him to do the stuff to me, as I described during one of the earlier videos that I made within the last 6 months, how I described my parents taking pictures of me and making videos of me and potentially selling those videos online whenever I was just very, very little, and how I was promised money and all that stuff. I've mentioned that in a couple different videos now. And then after being molested by Brian Almerode in the church, there were at least 15 other girls getting molested by that dude. And the preacher at the time, who I believe is still alive, he, like, my parents took me to like a church, and instead of letting me go in Sunday school with the other kids, they kept me out with all the adults. And then the preacher came out and was like, hey, there's been some abuse allegations, and anyone who has anything like that to say can step forward and accept this money as a token of an apology from us or whatever. And my parents were like nudging me, like trying to like get me to go accept money from this dude from getting fucking molested. And I was like, wow, that's weird. Is that why they put me through this weird molestation shit, so that they could get money, or we could get money? I was like, this is really fucked up. Like they were like trying to get me to accept money from the dude, and the dude, like the fucking preacher dude, stood up there insinuating over and over and over again, if does anybody want this money? If anybody's been abused here, please take this money. It's like, no, dude. 9, 10, 11 years old, I was like, no, I'm not taking this motherfucker's money. They're not just going to give me money for abusing me like that. That's fucked up. So yeah, that's all that I'm gonna say for now. That's over 40 minutes of talking about murderers and fucking pedophiles. So there's a little bit more for people to chop up. Peace.